Tonight's story is about a single mother who takes a housekeeping job in Los Angeles, only to discover that fate has tied her to a wealthy heir in ways no one could have imagined. Before we begin, write the name of the city you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to rate this story when it's done. Enjoy, and let's begin. The city of Los Angeles wore its usual disguise that afternoon. Palm trees leaning into the sky like overconfident actors, traffic snarling across the valley like a bad-tempered chorus, and the Hollywood Hills glowing in the haze of late sunlight. On a crowded bus, a young woman sat clutching a canvas tote that had seen better days. Her name was Joy. 26 years old, a single mother, and already carrying more history than most people twice her age. She wasn't heading to a movie set, or an audition, or one of those cafes where screenwriters hammered out their dreams. She was headed to a mansion on Mulholland Drive, a glass-and-stone fortress belonging to the Sanchez family. To most Angelinos, that name meant wealth, influence, and scandals whispered through champagne glasses. To Joy, it meant a paycheck, a chance to keep her daughter Stacy's asthma medication filled, a chance to buy real groceries instead of whatever was left on discount, maybe even enough to get Stacy a used laptop for school. Joy pressed her forehead to the window, counting breaths the way she'd learned to when anxiety sat on her chest. 4 in, 6 out. She had learned to survive on rituals like that. Survival had been the theme since she was 18 and made the mistake that turned her into a mother before she was ready. She didn't even remember the face of Stacy's father, just neon lights, cheap liquor, and a night that blurred into a consequence she carried forever. Some women would have folded. Joy didn't. She clawed her way forward for the sake of the little girl who was now her universe. The bus hissed to a stop, and when Joy stepped off, she felt as if she had landed on another planet. Ahead loomed the Sanchez estate. The driveway stretched upward like a private road to Olympus, lined with imported palms and spotless pavement. Behind the gates, the house shimmered, walls of glass catching the last of the day's light, stone columns jutting out like a crown. It wasn't a home. It was a statement. She buzzed the intercom, her voice steady even as her palms sweated. "This is Joy Ramos, new housekeeping staff." The gate slid open with mechanical detachment, as though granting her temporary permission to breathe. At the front door, she was met by Tanya, the house manager, a woman in her 50s, sharp eyes, brisk hands, the kind of presence that said she'd been running households like this for decades. "You're on time," Tanya said, as if testing her first. "Good. We like punctual." She handed Joy a clipboard of rules. "Mrs. Nadia is away on business. Mr. Leonard is expected home soon. You do your work, you'll be fine. But remember this. In this house, discretion is oxygen. You breathe it, or you suffocate." "Yes, ma'am," Joy said softly. The tour left her dizzy. 3 kitchens, one for show, one for actual meals, one just for snacks after midnight. Bedrooms larger than her entire apartment. A pool that seemed to mirror the whole city. It was a different world, one Joy had only ever glimpsed in magazines. People left behind at the bus stop. Now she was in it, broom in hand, her future balanced on the edge of someone else's luxury. That night, after her shift, Joy sat in the staff lounge, a small room tucked in the back like an afterthought. She FaceTimed Stacy, whose smile filled the cracked phone screen. "Mama, did you see a celebrity yet?" Stacy asked, her eyes bright, her front teeth still missing from 2nd grade. Joy laughed. "No celebrities today, sweetheart. But the house? It looks like a movie star. Take a picture." Joy almost turned her camera toward the chandelier, then remembered the agency's rule: no photos, ever. "Next time, baby," she said. "Now tell me about school." Stacy launched into an excited explanation of her science project. "Mama, I made a constellation, and I named it Mama." Joy's throat tightened. She smiled, hiding the ache of missing another bedtime. When Stacy finally drifted off mid-sentence, Joy whispered into the dark screen, "Good night, astronaut." She closed the phone and stared at the ceiling until sleep found her. The next morning began like any other shift. Joy moved through the kitchen, quietly labeling sauces, stacking glasses, polishing marble counters until they reflected her tired face. That's when she felt it, an energy in the room. She turned, and there he was, Leonard Sanchez, her new employer. He was taller than she expected, lean but solid, with a jaw that looked carved by stubbornness and eyes that carried both power and weariness. He wore a navy suit with no tie, like someone who belonged to the upper world but refused to let it choke him. "You're new," he said. His voice was calm, measured, more statement than question. "Yes, sir," Joy answered, forcing her voice steady. His gaze slid to the containers she had labeled. "Chimichurri, cilantro lime. You labeled them correctly." Joy almost smiled. "Mixing those up would be tragic, sir." For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, amusement, maybe both. The corner of his mouth twitched, as though he wasn't used to people talking back, even politely. He walked past her, leaving a faint trail of cedarwood cologne and rain. "Welcome to the house," he muttered. It was only 2 words, but for a woman who had grown used to being invisible, those 2 words were a coin dropped into an empty jar of hope. That night, lying on her narrow staff bed, Joy replayed the moment. She knew better than to dream. Leonard Sanchez was a man, carved out of marble and privilege. She was a single mother fighting to keep the lights on, but something about his eyes had unsettled her, a glimpse of exhaustion, maybe even loneliness. She turned onto her side and whispered her daughter's name, Stacy. "Mama's doing this for you." Tomorrow she would survive again. That was what she did best. But deep down, beneath the armor she wore, a tiny spark whispered, "What if survival isn't the only thing you were meant for?" The second evening at the Sanchez estate unfolded like a stage play waiting for its actors. The sunset draped itself over Los Angeles in hues of amber and rose, while inside the mansion, Joy moved through the kitchen with a tray balanced in her hands, rehearsing her own silent performance. She wasn't here to be seen. She was here to work, to vanish into the background like the clink of ice in a glass or the faint hum of a refrigerator. But the house manager Tanya had warned her earlier. "In the day, tonight Leonard is hosting guests. Not a party, not business. Somewhere in between. Keep to the edges. Smile if smiled at. Otherwise, be invisible. Invisible." Joy had lived her whole life trying not to be noticed, yet somehow that word felt heavier here. By 7 o'clock, the air was perfumed with the scent of imported roses and expensive whiskey. Guests began arriving. Producers, agents, investors who wore confidence like a second suit. They laughed too loudly, shook hands too firmly, and glanced too often at their own reflections in the glass walls. Joy circled the room with her tray of champagne flutes, keeping her gaze down, her steps careful. And then, like gravity shifting, he entered. Leonard Sanchez. He wore a dark suit that seemed to drink the light, no tie, just an open collar that suggested ease but carried command. Conversations tilted toward him as naturally as sunflowers turned to the sun. He acknowledged his guests with nods and faint smiles, but his attention was sharp, calculating, like a man who had learned early that every word was currency and every silence was a weapon. Joy tried not to look at him, yet found herself watching anyway. He carried himself with a quiet authority, the kind that didn't need to shout. But behind his polished surface, she thought she glimpsed something else, a flicker of weariness, the faint shadow of a man who bore the weight of more than just money. She turned her attention back to her tray. One step, another step. Then suddenly, a guest stumbled backward in laughter, nearly colliding with her. The tray tilted, a glass threatened to fall. In an instant, a steady hand caught the base of the tray, saving it from disaster. It was Leonard. For one suspended second, their eyes met, hers wide with embarrassment, his calm but surprisingly human. "Sorry," she murmured, heat rising to her cheeks. "My fault," he replied, as if the concept of fault was something he rarely admitted to anyone. He released the tray and walked on, but the moment lingered, imprinted like a watermark. Joy couldn't scrub away. From across the room, a ripple of laughter rang out. Elizabeth had arrived. She was radiant in a red dress that clung like it had been sewn for this very night. Her smile was dazzling, practiced, the kind that left a mark on every camera, even the invisible ones. She glided straight to Leonard, slipping her arm through his as though it belonged there. "You promised to show me the view," she purred loud enough for everyone to hear. Leonard didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. He offered her a polite smile, then turned his gaze briefly back toward the room. For the smallest moment, his eyes brushed over Joy, then moved on. Joy's heart thudded, though she scolded herself for caring. What was he to her? A boss. Nothing more. Men like him didn't see women like her, and yet in that single glance she felt exposed, as though he'd read her secret thoughts. Later, Joy slipped outside to clear empty glasses by the pool. The surface of the water shimmered under the lights, reflecting the skyline below like a second city turned upside down. She moved carefully, balancing her tray, but one careless drop of water had betrayed her. Her sneaker slid, the tray clattered, and then she was falling, the pool rushing up like a cold embrace. The shock of the water stole her breath, muffling the world in an instant. She flailed, panic clawing up her throat. Then strong arms encircled her, pulling her upward, breaking the surface. She gasped, coughing, water streaming from her hair, her chest heaving. "Leonard." He held her steady, his face inches from hers, his expression tight with concern. "Are you all right?" His voice, usually so composed, was low and urgent now. I'm fine," she sputtered, though her lungs still burned. "I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize," he said firmly, guiding her to the edge. Guests gathered, murmuring, some laughing nervously, others whispering scandal. And then Elizabeth appeared, draping a towel around Joy's shoulders with a sweetness that was anything but. "She should have watched where she was going," she said, her tone laced with venom hidden beneath a smile. Joy bit back a reply, lowered her head and whispered, "Thank you." But she wasn't speaking to Elizabeth. Back in the staff quarters, Joy leaned against the cool metal of a locker, her hair damp, her heart still pounding. She laughed once, bitterly at her own clumsiness, then forced herself to change and return to duty. When the evening ended, Joy stepped outside into the night air, the city glittering below like a million unsolved puzzles. She wrapped her jacket tighter around herself, whispering, "Keep your head down, Joy. This job is all that matters." And yet, no matter how she tried to shake it off, the memory of Leonard's hand steadying her, his eyes searching hers, followed her into the darkness. For the first time, she wondered if survival was about to collide with something far more dangerous, being truly seen. The mansion slept the way rich houses do, half awake, lights dimmed, but never dark. Long after the last guest left and the floors were restored to their quiet shine, Joy stood alone by the service sink, washing the last handful of crystal as if penance could be measured in soap and steam. Her shirt still held a whisper of pool chlorine. Her ribs still remembered panic. Every few breaths, the moment snapped back. The slip, the silence underwater, the hand pulling her up. She told herself not to dwell. She'd learned long ago that replaying a scene doesn't change the ending, it just steals sleep. "Call it," Tanya said from the doorway, voice soft for once. "You earned tomorrow's oxygen." Joy nodded, stacked the last glass in its nest and clocked out. On the bus, she texted one line to a sleeping daughter, "I'm safe. Big day. Proud of you, astronaut." Then pressed her forehead to the window and let the city smear into a watercolor of brake lights and possibility. Morning arrived like it always does for working people. Too fast, too bright. Joy was back before, the landscapers tying on her apron in a kitchen that still smelled faintly of last night's vanilla custard. She wanted to make herself smaller than yesterday's embarrassment. Invisible. Efficient. The house, however, seemed determined to do the opposite. Leonard appeared in the doorway with the gravity of someone who didn't do accidental. No suit jacket, sleeves rolled, hair not yet disciplined into its public shape. He carried 2 paper cups. "Coffee," he said, as if he had to justify the unusual sight of him crossing into staff space with something as ordinary as kindness. "You don't have to," she began. "I know," he cut in gently, "but I wanted to." He set 1 cup near her and leaned against the island, not close enough to crowd, not far enough to pretend distance meant disinterest. "About last night," he said, and Joy's stomach pitched. He held up a palm. "No lecture, just, I'm sorry you had to experience it in front of a room full of people who like stories more than truth." He watched her choose a response. She chose dignity. "I'm fine, sir." He studied the steam curling off her cup, as if the right words might rise in it. "Then at least let me fix the pathing around the pool." "That slick edge shouldn't exist," Joy's mouth twitched. "You going to fire the water next?" A breath of a laugh escaped him before he had time to cancel it. "If it takes a memo, I'll draft one." They were saved from more awkwardness by the arrival of Elizabeth's voice, as bright and lacquered as a red heel on marble. "Lenny," she called, strolling into the kitchen as though it were another stage. She stopped when she saw Joy, took, in the paper cup at her elbow, filed it in whatever private ledger she kept for perceived slights. "Oh," she said lightly, "we're serving barista chic now?" Her smile had the sharpness of a new knife. "Elizabeth," Leonard said, his tone landing somewhere between hostess and halt. "We're done here." He turned back to Joy, not as a flourish but as a choice. "Take the afternoon off if you want. You don't have to pretend nothing happened." Joy shook her head. "Work helps." He held her gaze for a beat longer. "The necessary," nodded, and left. Elizabeth followed, leaving a perfume wake and a suggestion of war. Work did help. Chopping vegetables realigned the universe into manageable pieces. Polishing glass forced your breath to steady. By noon, the kitchen had been reset into its textbook perfection, and Joy had reassembled herself into the quiet machinery that houses, like this run-on. She was labeling a row of sauces when Tanya slid a folder across the counter. "Payroll advance approved," she said. "1 month. On your terms." Joy blinked. "I didn't ask Leonard." Tanya's eyebrow crooked. "You didn't have to." The folder was neat, unshowy, numbers that meant groceries and rent, shoes that fit Stacy's growing feet. Gratitude pushed up, quick and hot. "I'll pay it back." "You will," Tanya said, not as a threat but as a fact about the kind of woman Joy was. The day stretched without incident. Joy took comfort in routine. Inventory, deliveries, the small choreography of preparing for a dinner that would be just family, which in this house meant escalated expectations and no margin for error. She was arranging cutlery when Leonard reappeared, this time with his public armor on. "My mother's on her way back," he said. "We'll do a quiet dinner." Joy nodded, felt a thread of nerves pull taut. She'd never met Nadia Sanchez, but she knew of her. Anyone who read the city like weather knew. Elegant like a blade, charitable like a headline, loyal to family the way power is loyal to itself. Nadia arrived with travel on her shoulders and command in her step. She kissed the air near Leonard's cheek, placed her bag where someone would think to move it, and took the room's temperature like a seasoned medic. When her gaze flicked to Joy, it didn't linger as judgment. It registered. Recorded, moved on. Joy preferred that to false warmth. Dinner began with the delicate sounds of silver and low conversation. Joy moved like a steady tide, refill, retrieve, replace. She didn't try to steal glances, but now and then she caught Nadia's questions, folding into Leonard's answers, a mother assessing not just deals but damage. When Elizabeth arrived late, she did it with the triumphant air of someone who believes her presence improves the light. She laughed at Leonard's half-jokes, touched his sleeve to stake a claim, looked at Joy as if inventorying the help. Joy kept her face in neutral, service as shielding. Between courses, Nadia's voice drifted toward the kitchen. "I hear there was excitement by the pool." Leonard's fork paused. "Handled." Elizabeth cut in with a syrupy sigh. It was quite a scene, but she's fine, she added, with a glance toward the doorway that made Joy wish she could absorb into the walls. Nadia's response was so soft it almost didn't arrive. Our staff are not scenery. It should have been nothing, a sentence, a stance. But for Joy, it felt like a plank laid across a gap she'd been leaping over her whole life. Respect doesn't need applause to be loud. After dinner, when the plates were stacked and the dishwasher hummed its steady absolution, Joy stepped out to the lemon courtyard for a breath. Night had pulled a navy sheet over the hills. The city glittered like it had secrets to sell. She held a lemon to her nose, the skin releasing oil that smelled like small mercies. You all right? Leonard asked from the shadow of a pillar. I will be, she said. Honesty felt dangerous and clean. He came closer, not enough to be rumor, enough to be real. My mother can be a lot. She means well with a kill shot. Joy smiled despite herself. She said I wasn't scenery. That is her version of affection, he said dryly. Silence settled, companionable, if not comfortable. Then the quiet cracked. A figure leaned into the courtyard gate, eyes slick with opportunity. He wore last night's shirt and a grin Joy knew too well from a life she'd outgrown. Manny. He shouldn't have been anywhere near this house. Joy, he sang, the two syllables stretched thin. Fancy real estate for a girl from the neon. The lemon in Joy's palm might as well have weighed 1,000 pounds. Tanya appeared with the speed of a good manager and a good friend. You're trespassing, she said. Manny's gaze flicked to Leonard, recalculating. I'm just visiting an old friend. Got history. Got stories. He tapped the gate with 2 fingers, mock salute, and faded back into the dark like a bad idea that hadn't finished trying. Who was that? Leonard's voice had shifted down into the register where men consider violence. Joy kept her eyes on the lemon. Someone who thinks the past is a bill I still have to pay. She thought he would demand names, dates, drama. He didn't. Security. We'll make sure he doesn't come back, he said. She shook her head. Please, don't turn him into a headline. He wants attention more than money. Starve him. Leonard studied her for a long beat, then nodded once, the way a person agrees to a treaty they wouldn't have written but will honor. Okay. The word landed like a promise he intended to keep. Back in her narrow room that night, Joy lay, awake and watched shadows move across the ceiling as the pool light cycled. She traced the shape of the day in her mind. Coffee she hadn't asked for, a payroll advance with no strings, a mother who liked knives and used them to cut bread, an old ghost at a new gate. She felt gratitude, unease, and something more dangerous, hope, competing in her chest like 3 hands reaching for one steering wheel. She reached for her phone and opened Stacy's photos. There was the constellation, lopsided and perfect, with the word Mama scrawled like a victory. Joy typed, Saturday, 2 hours at a pool that looks like the sky. Bring goggles. A typing bubble appeared, then a reply. Can we name a star after pancakes? Joy laughed into the quiet. Yes, she wrote. In this house, we can name anything we want. Sleep came at last, not as an avalanche, but as a truce. And for the first time, since stepping through those glass doors, Joy didn't fall into it like a person fleeing. She drifted, like someone learning water can hold you if you let it. The weekend crept into the Sanchez estate with a strange quiet, the kind that made marble floors echo more than usual. Joy was polishing silver in the service pantry when her phone buzzed. She almost never got calls at work. The screen flashed, a name she hadn't seen in years. Manny. Her breath caught. She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed the power button, silencing the device. But the memory of that name was enough to drag her backward in time, to flashing neon lights, to music that shook the walls of a club where no one remembered anyone's last name, to the night she got drunk enough to forget what dignity looked like. By morning, she was carrying a life she hadn't planned for. Stacy, the only good thing to come out of that chaos. But Manny, he wasn't Stacy's father. He was just another ghost from that world, the kind who collected secrets like coins, and spent them when he smelled weakness. Joy inhaled sharply, grounding herself in the present. She wiped the last fork, set it perfectly on the velvet-lined tray, and whispered, "He can't touch me here. Except ghosts never listen." That evening, while the family dined, Joy carried trays back and forth, steady as ever. She was leaving the dining room with an empty plate when she saw him. Manny, leaning against the far gate near the courtyard, smirk curling under the security lights. He looked thinner than she remembered, but the swagger was the same, the dangerous confidence of a man who'd always lived by taking from others. "Joy," he drawled, just loud enough for her to hear. "Looking good in that uniform. Fits you better than Neon did." Her hands tightened around the plate. "You need to leave," she whispered. "Relax," Manny said, showing his palms as if he were harmless. "I just came to remind you, debts don't vanish. People don't forget." Before Joy could respond, Tanya appeared at her side like a storm on 2 feet. "Sir, this is private property. Step away from the gate before I make a call you won't like." Manny smirked, tipped an invisible hat, and backed away into the dark. "See you soon, Joy," he said, voice sticky with promise. The plate nearly slipped from her hands. Tanya caught her wrist gently. "Tell me what he wants." Joy shook her head. "He's no one, just a shadow." Tanya's eyes narrowed. "Shadows bite when you ignore them." Later, alone in the pantry, Joy let the tears come. She had built a life carefully, like stacking fragile glasses. Now Manny was back, threatening to topple everything. And Stacy, sweet, bright Stacy, couldn't. No. Joy would never let the ugliness of her past drip into her daughter's light. She thought she was safe for the night. But as she stepped out into the courtyard to breathe, she found Leonard standing there, hands in his pockets, face half lit by the glow of the pool. He didn't look surprised to see her. "You've been on edge since dinner," he said simply. Joy froze. He was too observant. "It's nothing, sir." Leonard tilted his head, studying her. "Don't lie. I can always tell." The truth trembled in her chest. She wanted to push it down, the way she always had, but his eyes, steady, unflinching, made it harder. Finally, she whispered, "Someone from my past showed up. He wants to use what he knows against me." Leonard's jaw tightened. His voice dropped into that low register Joy had already learned to recognize as dangerous. "Who?" She shook her head. "If you get involved, it'll get worse. He wants attention. Don't give it to him." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Leonard nodded once. "If you say that's the way, I'll listen. But if he comes near you again, I won't." Joy's throat tightened. Why do you care?" Leonard's eyes flickered, something raw breaking through the calm mask. "Because I can't stand people who mistake kindness for weakness. And because—" He stopped himself, looked away. "Forget it. Just don't carry this alone." Joy's heart pounded as he walked back inside, leaving her under the cold light of the pool. She whispered to herself, "I can't let him in. I can't." But deep down, she already knew. Leonard was inside, whether she liked it or not. That night, Joy held Stacy's photo against her chest as she lay in bed. Her daughter's little smile steadied her heartbeat, gave her courage. "For you, baby," she whispered. "Always for you." But outside, somewhere in the city, Manny was waiting. And Joy feared the storm he promised was only just beginning. The Sanchez Foundation Gala was the kind of night the city circled on its social calendar. Joy had heard about it for weeks, whispered in the staff hallways, with a mix of dread and awe. A night when the mansion turned into a cathedral of wealth, where donors drank champagne while convincing themselves they were saving the world. For Joy, it was just another shift, another tray to balance, another smile to wear like armor. But as she buttoned her pressed uniform, she couldn't shake the heaviness in her stomach. The memory of Manny's smirk lingered like smoke after fire. By the time the first guests arrived, the mansion had transformed. Lights bathed the courtyard in gold. The pool glittered like a jewel. Musicians filled the air with soft strings, their bows moving as if nothing in the world could ever break. Joy moved silently among the crowd, offering flutes of champagne, practicing invisibility. Then came Elizabeth. She arrived in a gown that clung to her like liquid silver, her smile brighter than the chandeliers. She glided to Leonard's side without hesitation, linking her arm through his as though it were hers by birthright. The cameras, invited discreetly for publicity, captured the image. The wealthy heir and the socialite, perfectly paired. Joy kept her eyes on the tray, but her heart betrayed her. She told herself it didn't matter. She wasn't here for him. She was here for Stacy, for survival. And yet, each laugh Elizabeth offered, each possessive touch, landed like a small stone in her chest. She turned away, retreating toward the quieter lounge near the back. That's when she saw him, Manny. He was dressed better than before, borrowed suit, slicked back hair, but the grin was the same, predatory. He leaned against the wall, watching her. Quite an upgrade from the bar, huh, Joy? He whispered when she passed. Her blood went cold. What are you doing here? Public event, he said with a shrug. Open bar, open doors. And hey, plenty of people here who'd pay good money for a juicy story about the Sanchez family's little housemaid. Her grip tightened on the tray. Leave me alone. But Manny wasn't done. He leaned in closer, breath sour with liquor. Tell your boss the truth before I do. Or better yet, maybe I tell his mother. Wonder how she'd feel about you hiding a kid and a past. Joy's pulse thundered in her ears. She stepped back, nearly colliding with another server. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the air. Problem here? Leonard. He stood at Manny's shoulder, eyes sharp, jaw clenched. Manny straightened, tried to play it off. Just catching up with an old friend. Leonard didn't blink. You don't belong here. Security will escort you out, or I will. For a moment, Manny held his ground, smirk faltering under Leonard's glare. Then, with a mocking bow, he slinked away into the night. Joy's knees threatened to give, but Leonard's hand steadied the tray before she dropped it. His voice was low, meant only for her. Was he telling the truth? Do you have a child? Her throat closed. She wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. At last, she whispered, Yes. Leonard's eyes didn't soften, but something shifted in them. Less judgment, more calculation. We'll talk later, he said, stepping back before the cameras could notice. The rest of the night blurred. Joy moved through the gala like a ghost, setting down drinks, smiling mechanically, her mind a whirlpool. By the time the final guest left, she was drained, her secret cracked open. Back in the staff lounge, she collapsed onto a chair, head in her hands. She had spent years protecting Stacy from this world, from judgment, from shame. And now, in one reckless evening, Manny had shoved her past into the light. But there was something else, too. When Leonard looked at her after she admitted the truth, he hadn't turned away. He hadn't sneered. And that terrified her more than Manny's threats. Because for the first time, Joy realized the walls she'd built around her life weren't just being threatened. They were beginning to fall. The mansion was quieter after the gala, as if even the walls needed a moment to recover from so many eyes and voices. Joy worked her shifts with practiced silence, grateful for the return to routine. But nothing inside her felt routine anymore. Manny's sudden reappearance haunted her every step, and Leonard's question, "Do you have a child?" echoed like a bell she couldn't unring. For 2 nights she avoided him. She stayed busy in the kitchen, the laundry, anywhere her uniform let her fade into the background. But Leonard wasn't the kind of man who let things slip into silence. It was Tanya who broke the news. "Leonard wants you to bring your daughter here," she said briskly, setting down a clipboard in the staff lounge. Joy froze. "What?" "Saturday, pool hours. He said it'll look like a family day for staff." Mrs. Nadia approved. Joy's pulse quickened. Stacy? In this house? In front of Leonard? Her instinct screamed no. This wasn't their world. But Stacy had been begging to see the pool ever since Joy mentioned it. And when Joy called her that evening, Her daughter's squeal of joy drowned out every hesitation. So Saturday came. Stacy arrived clutching a backpack nearly as big as she was, her hair in two playful braids, goggles hanging around her neck. She looked up at the mansion with eyes wide as planets. "Mama, is this a castle?" Joy smiled, tightening her grip on her daughter's hand. "Something like that." Tanya met them at the gate, softer than usual. "Pool's yours for 2 hours. Staff entrance, no cameras, go enjoy." For a while it was easy. Stacy splashed, laughed, swam like the water was made just for her. Joy sat at the edge, soaking in her daughter's laughter, a sound she hadn't realized she'd been starving for in this house of whispers. Then a shadow fell across them. Leonard. He wasn't in a suit, just slacks and a white shirt with sleeves rolled, shoes off, standing with his hands in his pockets as if he wasn't sure what to do with them. Stacy blinked at him, curious but not afraid. "Hi," she said, pulling her goggles up onto her forehead. "Hi," Leonard replied, voice softer than Joy had ever heard it. He crouched near the pool's edge. "You must be Stacy." She nodded proudly. "Are you Mama's boss?" Leonard glanced at Joy, who sat frozen, then back at Stacy. "Something like that." Stacy tilted her head. "Do you know about planets?" His brow lifted. "A little." She climbed out of the pool, dripping, and marched over with the authority only children have. "Mama says Pluto isn't a planet anymore, but I think it should be. What do you think?" Leonard smiled, an unguarded smile, not the polite one he wore at galas. "I agree. Pluto deserves another chance." Joy's breath caught. She hadn't seen him like this, gentle, human, stripped of the armor he carried around donors and rivals. For a moment she forgot her fear, forgot Manny, forgot the world. The three of them sat there, the billionaire, the maid, and the child, the pool glittering under the afternoon sun. Stacy talked about her constellation project, showing him her notebook full of stars she'd drawn. Leonard listened, really listened, as if her words mattered as much as any boardroom strategy. At one point, Stacy yawned, resting her wet head against Joy's shoulder. Leonard reached for a towel, draping it over the girl with a care that startled Joy. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Something dangerous, something undeniable. When Stacy dozed off, Joy whispered, "Why are you doing this?" Leonard looked at her, expression unreadable. "Because she deserves to feel like the world isn't against her. And because—" He hesitated, then said quietly, "You deserve it too." Joy's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him this was temporary, that she didn't belong in his world. But the warmth of the towel around Stacy, the softness in his voice, silenced her. For the first time in years, she let herself imagine it. What life might be like if she wasn't always running from her past. If Stacy could grow up with more than survival. It scared her. It thrilled her. And it felt like the beginning of something she might not be able to stop. By Monday, the mansion had snapped back into its usual choreography. Deliveries beeped at the service gate. The espresso machine sighed at 8, and the pool returned to being a mirror for a sky that never quite meant what it said. Joy was grateful for the rhythm. Rhythm kept your hands busy and your heart quiet. But two new currents cut beneath the day. Leonard's attention, steady and watchful, and Elizabeth's, sharp as a hairline crack you don't notice until the glass is in your hand. It started with a bouquet, not the kind that lands in a billionaire's foyer, but one left on a steel counter in the staff kitchen. White tulips, wrapped in paper the color of bone. A card tucked in with handwriting that knew how to be elegant without trying. For Stacy's constellation. L. No signature beyond that initial, no flourish. Joy stared at the card as if it might bloom into a problem. Tanya glanced over her shoulder, whistled low. "Don't look at me," she said. "I just put them in water." Joy slipped the card into her pocket like contraband, then spent the morning trying not to take the flowers home and trying not to leave them where a storm could find them. The storm found her anyway, wearing red. Elizabeth breezed into the kitchen, At noon without an appointment, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Is Leonard around?" she asked Tanya, but her eyes were on Joy, amused, clinical, as if she'd spotted a hairline crack. "Meeting," Tanya said, unbothered. "Conference room." Elizabeth hummed, then smiled at Joy with a sweetness that tasted manufactured. "That towel trick by the pool was adorable," she said, voice pitched just for Joy. "You know how to make an impression." "I was doing my job," Joy replied, polite to the point of friction. "Of course," Elizabeth purred. "And it's such an important one, being reliable, being available." She let the word hang, then reached for a napkin as if she might need something to dab away whatever truth might spill. "I adore stories like yours. Self-made, defied the odds, pulled yourself up by the apron strings." The smile sharpened. "But you know what those stories always forget? Scale. There's what fits in the staff wing, and there's what fits in the papers." Joy met her gaze. "I'm not a story. I'm an employee, and I'm very good at boundaries." "I'm thrilled to hear it," Elizabeth said, "because the thing about boundaries is, someone has to enforce them." She slid her sunglasses back down, glanced toward the glass corridor, and left a ribbon of perfume behind, the kind that gets in your clothes and rides home with you. By late afternoon, the phone in the staff lounge lit like a field of fireflies. A blogger had posted a blind item, thinly veiled, thickly cruel, about a certain heir rediscovering his paternal instincts with help from a starry-eyed single mother. The comments gnashed their usual teeth. Joy didn't read them. Tanya did, then set the phone face down as if it had tried to bite. "We don't dignify trash," she said, but her mouth was a hard line. Nadia noticed the weather change the way generals smell rain. She called PR, called legal, called no one else. No statements, no denials. She played the rarest card in a town that worships noise, silence. "Let time do its job," she told Leonard in a voice that permitted no counter-argument. He nodded, then ignored the part about distance. If Elizabeth meant to frighten Joy into retreat, Leonard's next move disarranged the board. He stopped treating her like a reflection in a glass wall and started treating her like a person in the room. Not showily, never that. A question about her route home when the late shift ran long. A nod good morning that acknowledged more than payroll. The smallest, strangest thing. He learned Stacy's teacher's name and used it in a sentence, correctly. These were not fireworks. They were lamps, turned on one by one down a dark hallway. Elizabeth adapted. People like her always do. She didn't storm. She seeped. She took Nadia to lunch at a place that serves power on ice, talked art and donors, and the burden of proximity. She did not say Joy's name. She let other people say it for her. She called a publicist who owed her 3 favors and asked a question in the form of a compliment. She told a photographer, "Don't shoot the staff. It's inelegant," and made sure one blurry frame existed anyway. She learned more by asking less than dialed the number that would change the weather entirely. Manny picked up on the 3rd ring with the cheer of a man who believes the universe owes him interest. "Who's this?" he said, which was his way of saying, "I will be whoever you need me to be." Elizabeth didn't bother with an alias. "The friend you've been waiting to meet," she replied. "I hear you have a past for sale." Manny laughed like a door on a bad hinge. "Depends on the buyer." "I pay well," she said, "and I keep my hands clean." They set a time, they set a price, they set a trap. Joy felt the trap before. She saw it. It arrived as small humiliations that only mean something when you line them up like dominoes. A delivery guy with a camera on his cap lingering a beat too long in the service hall. A neighbor texting to say a car was idling outside. Joy's apartment at 11 p.m. with the headlights off. An anonymous number that sent exactly 3 words to Joy's phone. "How's the water?" She showed the text to Tanya, who nodded once, furious in a quiet way. "We'll loop security," Tanya said. "And Leon, Mr. Sanchez." Joy shook her head. "Please, not yet." She wasn't sure whether the yet was fear or pride. That evening, as Joy wiped down the last counter and the house downshifted into its nocturne, Leonard stepped into the kitchen doorway with that polite knock. The very rich don't actually have to give. Walk with me, he said. It was not an order. It was a sentence built like a bridge, offered and stable. She followed him down the glass corridor, past the pool that pretended it had no memory, into the lemon courtyard where a single bulb, the kind that refuses trends, cast a patient circle of light. Elizabeth came to see me, he said, hands in pockets, posture that of a man who writes his own headlines and hates every one of them. She has concerns. Joy allowed herself a dry smile. I've noticed. He studied her for a long second. Do you? He asked. Have concerns? Joy thought of scales and worlds, and the way gravity always chooses the bigger body. Yes, she said. About my kid. About being turned into a version of myself I don't recognize. About losing this job for something that it isn't what people think. The last word surprised her by being true out loud. He nodded. A fraction. I can draw lines, he said, between what is mine and what is not. Between what I feel and what the world gets to devour. The word feel hung there, honest and reckless. Joy didn't touch it. And if your lines cost me mine, she asked, not combative, just precise. He exhaled, a brief surrender. Then we draw them again. Better. Before the moment could decide what it wanted to become, a voice arrived with ice clinking in it. There you are. Elizabeth glided into the courtyard, dressed the color of wine that stains. She took in the scene, filed it as evidence, and smiled a smile that wanted to be mistaken for grace. Don't mind me, she said. I'm just admiring the horticulture. Good night, Elizabeth, Leonard said, not unkind, not inviting. She turned to Joy as if bestowing a favor. Be careful on the stones, she cooed. They can be slippery. Then she was gone. The way a blade is gone after it has already done what it came to do. Joy looked at the ground and realized her feet were already steady. I should get back, she said. There's prep for the morning. He didn't stop her. He only said, if there's anything I should know before someone else decides to tell me, I'd rather hear it from you. And then he left her with the lemons and the light and a choice that felt like a live wire. Back in the staff hall, Tanya intercepted her with a folder and a face that said news. Small program from the foundation, she said. Scholarships for after-school science. Transportation stipend. Nadia signed it herself. It has Stacy's name on it. Joy blinked at the language on the page. Precise, generous, no strings that she could see. Gratitude rose in her throat like a tide that wouldn't be argued with. Why? She asked, to no one in particular. Tanya's mouth softened. Because sometimes queens feed villages, and sometimes they do it because a certain air convinces them the village raised a star. That night, Joy walked home with the scholarship letter folded into the safest corner of her bag and the tulips wrapped in the plainest paper she could find. Her block smelled like laundry and fried onions and the good part of being poor, neighbors who know your name. She climbed the stairs, paused at the door, and felt the phone buzz in her pocket. A new text from the same unknown number. Tick-tock. She imagined Manny's grin attached to it, and for the first time, didn't feel small. She felt tired. And then she felt angry. She opened the door to Stacy's sleeping shape and the cheap glow-in-the-dark stars doing their diligent work. Joy set the flowers in a thrift store jar, slid the scholarship letter under the magnet with Stacy's spelling, test and stood very still. A story was trying to make her into its villain or its punchline. She couldn't control the story, but she could control the next sentence. In a hotel bar across town, Elizabeth stirred her drink with a nail the color of threat while Manny talked too much about leverage and not enough about proof. I can put you where you want to be, he promised. All I need is one headline. Elizabeth smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. I don't need a headline, she said. I need pressure. Headlines burn too fast. Back on Mulholland, the pool lay still, the lemons kept their counsel, and the house inhaled. The game had begun, and for the first time since Joy stepped through those glass doors, She understood that not every trap is a cage. Some are a test to see who still knows how to walk out. The city had a way of turning night into theater. By the time Joy walked the long driveway up to the Sanchez estate the next morning, the hills were wrapped in fog, and the house glowed like a lantern. She pulled her cardigan tighter, the memory of that anonymous text, tick-tock, still gnawing at her ribs. She'd almost convinced herself it was just bluster. But then Manny showed up again. This time, he didn't lurk at a gate. He was waiting near the staff entrance, flipping a folded piece of paper between his fingers like a magician. When Joy froze, his grin widened. "Relax," he said, holding the paper up. "Just a little souvenir from the old days. Remember this?" She snatched it from him before she could stop herself. Her eyes darted across the words, her heart plunging. It was a photocopy of a loan slip, her name scrawled at the bottom, the amount absurd, interest laughable. A debt she'd never signed, never agreed to, but Manny knew what mattered wasn't truth. It was threat. "This isn't real," she hissed. He leaned closer, breath sour with cigarettes. "Doesn't have to be. All I gotta do is wave it in front of the right person, and suddenly you're not the sweet little maid anymore. You're a thief. A liar. A fraud." Joy's voice shook. "I don't owe you anything. You owe me silence," Manny snapped. "And silence has a price. Pay me, or I make noise." Tanya's footsteps echoed from the hall, and Manny slipped back into the shadows like smoke. Joy shoved the paper deep into her pocket, willing her heartbeat to steady before Tanya saw, but she didn't fool anyone. That evening, while clearing dinner plates, Leonard cornered her by the kitchen door. His voice was low, measured. "Who was that man?" Joy stiffened. "No one." Leonard's gaze hardened. "No one doesn't make you shake like that. Tell me the truth." The words jammed in her throat. Finally, she whispered, "He wants money. He says I owe him." "Do you?" Leonard asked. "No," she said quickly. "It's a lie, but lies don't matter if people believe them." Leonard's jaw flexed, his hand closing around the back of a chair. "Then I'll make sure no one believes him." Joy shook her head, fiercely. "No. Don't pay him, don't fight him. That's exactly what he wants. I'll handle it." "You can't fight men like that alone." "I've been fighting men like that my whole life," she shot back more sharply than she meant. Silence settled between them. For a moment, Leonard just looked at her, as though seeing every scar she carried but never showed. At last he said, softly, "You're stronger than most people I know, but even the strongest need backup." Joy's throat burned. She wanted to tell him everything, wanted to let him take the weight she'd been carrying since she was 18. But Stacy's face flashed in her mind. She couldn't risk it. Not yet. Later, in her small apartment, Joy tucked Stacy into bed. Her daughter curled against her, warm and safe, chattering about the science fair. "Mama, when I win, will you clap really loud?" Joy kissed her forehead. Loud enough to shake the stars. But when Stacy fell asleep, Joy sat in the dark kitchen with Manny's fake debt slip on the table. She traced the lines of her forged signature with a trembling finger. She'd clawed her way out of the neon bars, out of shame, out of drowning. And now a man like Manny wanted to drag her back. She whispered to herself, "Not again. Not this time." Across the city, Manny sat at a bar, nursing cheap whiskey. He checked his phone. A new message glowed on the screen. From Elizabeth. "Payment tomorrow. Deliver something useful." Manny grinned, pocketed the phone, and muttered to himself, "Time's running out, Joy." But what he didn't know was that time had also turned Leonard's way. And Leonard Sanchez had never been the kind of man who played defense. The house had a different rhythm when Nadia was away. Without her sharp heels on marble, the mansion seemed to breathe easier, its silence less intimidating, more human. But for Joy, silence was never peaceful. It was a stage where thoughts grew, teeth. She scrubbed the kitchen counters for the third time that morning, her mind circling Manny's threats. The forged debt slip sat hidden in her bag like a live wire. Every time she thought about it, she felt the same old fear rising, The fear that her past was a monster that would never stop chasing her. When she looked up, Leonard was there, leaning against the doorway, arms folded, watching her with that unsettling patience of his. "That counter's been clean for 10 minutes, he said. Joy straightened, embarrassed. "Just keeping busy." "You mean just trying not to think?" She swallowed. He was too close to the truth. "It's none of your concern, sir." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You keep calling me sir like it's a shield. Do you really think that word is enough distance between us?" "Yes," she said quickly, "because distance is safer." Safer for who? The words pierced her, and for a moment, the dam she'd been holding back cracked. For my daughter. For Stacy. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's for her, and I can't let her lose me to mistakes I made when I was 18. Leonard didn't move closer, but his voice softened. "What mistakes?" Joy looked down at her hands, rough from years of work, trembling slightly. "I was young, stupid, and desperate. I worked in a bar where men thought money could buy anything. One night, too much to drink, too much noise, and I woke up with nothing but regret and a child on the way. I never even knew who her father was. I never wanted to. Stacy is mine. She's the only good thing that came out of all of it." She lifted her chin, expecting judgment. Instead, Leonard's expression was unreadable, almost wounded. "And you've carried all of that alone?" Joy forced a bitter laugh. "Who else would carry it for me?" For the first time, Leonard's gaze faltered. He looked past her, as though his own ghosts had stirred. "You think you're the only one haunted?" he asked quietly. "You think being rich makes you immune?" Joy frowned, caught off guard. What could you possibly regret? His jaw tightened. Trusting the wrong people. Loving the wrong woman. Athena. She didn't just betray me. She sold pieces of my soul to anyone who'd pay. My own mother looks at me and sees failure every time she remembers that scandal. He exhaled, sharp. Money doesn't erase betrayal. It just makes the tabloids hungrier. Silence stretched, thick but not uncomfortable. Two people, two broken pasts, meeting in the middle. Finally, Joy whispered, "So what do we do with all this silence between us?" Leonard's eyes found hers again, steady, searching. "We don't let it be silence. We tell the truth. Even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts." Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to let someone else see the parts of her she'd buried. But fear still coiled inside her like barbed wire. "Leonard," she began, but the sound of heels clicking on marble cut her off. "Elizabeth." She appeared. In the hall, perfectly composed, a faint smirk tugging her lips. "Interrupting?" she asked sweetly, though her eyes said otherwise. Joy stepped back, retreating into the safety of distance. "I should get back to work." Leonard didn't stop her, but as she passed, his hand brushed against hers. Just enough to send a jolt through her chest. "This isn't over," he murmured. And Joy knew, with a mix of dread and hope, that he was right. That night, in her apartment, she watched Stacy sleep under the glow of plastic stars taped to the ceiling. Joy touched the forged debt slip, then shoved it into the trash. Manny's lies, Elizabeth's games, her own fears, they were all chains. And for the first time in years, she felt the faintest urge to break free, because Leonard Sanchez had told her the truth, and in his silence she had found a piece of her own voice. The storm broke on a Tuesday afternoon, disguised as routine. Nadia Sanchez returned from New York in a cloud of tailored silk and faint perfume, her entrance as sharp as the staccato click of her heels. For the staff, it meant a house back on, high alert. For Joy, it meant the air grew heavy again, like gravity had doubled overnight. At dinner, the dining room gleamed. Crystal, silver, fresh orchids, every detail perfect. Joy moved quietly, setting plates with practiced care. Stacy's face lingered in her mind like a prayer, but her body moved on autopilot. Then Nadia's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Leonard," she said, her tone too even. "I've been hearing things, unsettling things." Elizabeth, seated conveniently near, sipped her wine and said nothing, though her eyes sparkled. Leonard didn't flinch. "And where exactly have you been hearing them?" "Everywhere that matters," Nadia replied. "Rumors, whispers, that you've entangled yourself with someone inappropriate, that a child is involved." Her gaze slid, deliberate, to Joy, who froze mid-step with a tray in her hands. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Leonard spoke. "Rumors are cheap. I don't buy them." But Nadia wasn't finished. She folded her hands, her rings catching the light. "Then prove it. A DNA test. If this child is not yours, then the matter dies here. If she is, then I expect you to act accordingly." Joy nearly dropped the tray. "No," she whispered, her heart racing. Leonard's eyes flicked, to her steady. "Yes," he said firmly, "we'll do it." After dinner, Joy found him in the courtyard pacing. "Why did you agree to that?" she demanded, her voice trembling. "Because hiding will only make it worse," Leonard said. "If Stacy is mine, then no one, Elizabeth, my mother, Manny, no one can use her as a weapon against us, and if she isn't—" His voice faltered, then steadied. "At least the truth will silence them." Joy's throat tightened. "You don't understand. I don't even know who her father is. It could be anyone. It could be no one." He stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. "It could be me." Her breath caught. She searched his face for mockery, for doubt, but found none. Just conviction. 2 days later, Joy sat in a sterile clinic room, Stacy swinging her legs on the chair beside her. The nurse swabbed her cheek, then Stacy's, then Leonard's. Stacy looked up at him with wide eyes. "Does it hurt?" "Not at all," Leonard said, offering her a rare smile. "Like brushing your teeth." Joy couldn't breathe. The whole time she kept thinking of what it would mean, if the test came back positive, if Leonard was Stacy's father. That night, sleep refused her. She sat by Stacy's bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. She remembered every sacrifice, every insult, every humiliation she had endured to protect this little girl. And now, with one slip of paper, everything could change. 3 days later, the results arrived. Joy stood in the library, the envelope trembling in her hands. Leonard was beside her, silent, waiting. Tanya hovered near the door, a quiet anchor. "Open it," Leonard said. Joy tore the seal. Her eyes skimmed the words, her knees nearly giving way. She whispered, "It says, you're the father." For a moment, the room tilted. She heard her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She lifted her gaze, expecting anger, shock, anything but what she found. Leonard's eyes softened. A long, unsteady breath escaped him, like a man who'd been holding it for years. "I knew it," he murmured. Joy's hand trembled. "You can't mean that. How could you know?" "Because," Leonard said, stepping closer. "From the first moment I saw her smile, it felt familiar. Like something I'd lost." Tears burned Joy's eyes. She had spent 8 years telling herself Stacy belonged to no one but her. Now, the truth threatened to rewrite their lives. The door creaked open. Nadia entered, her gaze sharp, demanding. "Well?" Leonard turned, standing tall, protective. "She's mine," he said. His voice left no room for debate. "And from now on, Joy and Stacy are not to be touched." For once, Nadia faltered. Elizabeth's schemes, Manny's threats, all of it seemed to crumble in the face of undeniable proof. But for Joy, the battle was only beginning, because the truth wasn't just a weapon, it was a responsibility, and she wasn't sure if her heart was strong enough to survive what came next. The library still smelled faintly of the paper envelope when the real storm broke. Nadia's silence after Leonard's declaration was not surrender. It was calculation. She adjusted her pearl necklace, her eyes fixed on Joy with the cold precision of someone who'd spent her life slicing weakness apart. "So it's true," she said finally. Her tone carried no surprise, only a quiet disappointment that weighed heavier than anger. You've tied yourself to this. Joy lowered her gaze, every instinct telling her to shrink smaller, to protect Stacy with invisibility. But Leonard stepped forward, his voice sharp. Don't you dare talk about her like that. Nadia's eyes snapped to him. I'm your mother. I will speak truths you refuse to face. This woman is a liability. That child, even more so. You've risked the Sanchez name, the foundation, everything we've built, because you couldn't keep your judgment intact. Enough. Leonard's voice was iron. Stacy is my daughter, and Joy. He hesitated, then looked straight at Joy, his voice softening. She's not a liability. She's the strongest person I know. The words stole Joy's breath, but Nadia's lips thinned. Strong doesn't mean suitable. You think the world will welcome this? No. They will devour it. And her. Elizabeth chose that moment to glide into the room like smoke curling under a door. She'd clearly been waiting, listening. She's right, Leonard, Elizabeth said smoothly, her voice honey over steel. You've made your point, and it's noble, but nobility won't protect you from the press, or from donors pulling out, or from the board questioning your competence. Sometimes love, she glanced at Joy with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, just isn't enough. Joy felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but her throat closed. The room was too heavy, their words too sharp. Leonard turned on Elizabeth. You don't get to weigh in. You don't belong in this conversation. Her smile flickered, just for a second. I belong wherever the future of this family does, she replied. Then, with a graceful nod, she slipped back into the shadows. The door shut. Silence pressed down. Joy finally found her voice, though it shook. She's right. Your mother's right. Everyone's right. Leonard, I shouldn't be here. He spun to face her, disbelief flashing in his eyes. Don't say that. I have to, Joy whispered. For Stacy, I can't let her grow up in a war zone between your family and mine. She deserves peace, not headlines, not whispers. Joy. His voice cracked, but she held up a hand, desperate to stay steady. When I came here, I wanted one thing. Survival. Food on the table, rent paid, medicine for my daughter, that was all. And now everything's tangled. Manny's threats, Elizabeth's schemes, your mother's fury. It's too much. Leonard's chest rose and fell, his fists clenched. So your solution is to run? Her tears threatened to spill. My solution is to protect my daughter, even if it means leaving. The words hung like a knife between them. That night, back in her apartment, Joy packed a small bag quietly while Stacy slept, the glow-in-the-dark stars still holding vigil above her bed. She folded Stacy's school uniform, her science project, her favorite stuffed bear. Her hands shook, her heart aching, but she told herself it was the only way. She sat at the table, staring at the eviction notice of her past, Manny's threats, Nadia's disdain, all of it colliding in her mind. She whispered to herself, if I stay, they'll destroy us. If I go, at least Stacy has a chance. But deep down, another voice whispered too. And what about Leonard? She pushed it away, burying it under duty. Across the city, Leonard stood. In the courtyard alone, his reflection in the pool fractured by the wind. His mother's words rang in his ears, but so did Joy's. He clenched his jaw, whispering into the night. I won't lose them, not this time. Because Leonard Sanchez had already made his choice. And if Joy thought leaving would save her, she was about to learn. He was a storm just as fierce as the one surrounding them. The headlines hit like shrapnel. Joy didn't even see the article first. Tanya did. The house manager stormed into the staff lounge, a tablet in hand, her mouth pressed into a thin, furious line. She shoved it across the table to Joy. Read. Joy's stomach dropped. The screen glared with a tabloid banner. Billionaire heir's secret family? Leonard Sanchez linked to housemaid and child? Below, blurry photos, the kind that didn't need to be sharp to wound, showed Joy walking with Stacy near their small apartment, the girl's backpack too big for her shoulders. Another photo caught Leonard mid-laugh, leaning toward Stacy by the pool. The article dripped with speculation. Illegitimate child, scandal in the Sanchez empire, Maid seduces her boss. Joy's hands shook. No. Tanya's voice was low and dangerous. Elizabeth, Joy wanted to scream, but no sound came. She thought of Stacy at school, her classmates, the cruel whispers already forming. Her daughter had been just a little girl, drawing constellations and naming stars after pancakes, and now the world would paint her as shame. By the time Joy reached Stacy's school that afternoon, the damage had begun. She spotted two mothers on the sidewalk, whispering, glancing at her, their laughter brittle. Inside, she found Stacy sitting, alone in the corner of the classroom, her eyes red. "Mama," Stacy whispered, climbing into her lap. "Why are the kids saying I don't have a real dad?" The words cut deeper than Manny's threats, deeper than Nadia's disdain. Joy hugged, her daughter tight, rocking her gently. "You do have a dad," she whispered, "and you have me. That's real." But when she looked up, she saw Leonard standing in the doorway. He must have left meetings, maybe even a boardroom, to come here. His suit was immaculate, but his face was raw. He crossed the classroom in long strides, his gaze steady, and crouched beside Stacy. "They're wrong," he said firmly. "You do have a dad. Me." Stacy blinked, her tears halting. "You?" Leonard nodded. "Me. And anyone who says otherwise doesn't know what they're talking about." Joy's throat tightened. It was one thing for him to say it in private. But here, in public, in the wreckage of a tabloid storm, he was claiming them. That night, Leonard called a press conference. Joy begged him not to. "They'll crucify you," she said. He shook his head. "They'll crucify you if I don't." The cameras flashed, the questions fired. And Leonard Sanchez, the man who had built empires on silence and steel, did something no one expected. He told the truth. "Yes," he said clearly, voice carrying over the chaos. "Stacy is my daughter, and Joy is part of my life. That's all there is to it." The reporters erupted. But the message was out. No more whispers, no more shadows. In the days that followed, the fallout was brutal. Donors threatened to withdraw. Gossip burned hotter than wildfire. Elizabeth fanned the flames, calling Joy a gold digger in circles that thrived on venom. Manny bragged to anyone who'd listened that he'd predicted it all. But amid the wreckage, something unexpected happened. Some people admired Leonard's honesty. Articles began to shift tone. A billionaire who admits the truth? A single mother who survived against the odds? The narrative wasn't clean, but it wasn't all poison either. Joy stayed up late, scrolling through the chaos, her heart torn between dread and a fragile new hope. She whispered to herself, "If the world is going to see us, let them see us whole." For Stacy, the storm was confusing but not devastating. At night, she curled between Joy and Leonard on the couch, asking questions only a child could. "Does this mean we're a family now, like in my science project?" Leonard smiled, pulling her close. "Yes. A constellation. 3 stars, always connected." Joy felt tears sting her eyes. For once, the truth hadn't destroyed them. It had lit a path forward. But she also knew storms never ended clean. Somewhere, in the shadows, Elizabeth and Manny were still moving pieces on their board. And Nadia had yet to make her next move. The public exposure hadn't finished the story. It had only raised the stakes. The storm outside didn't vanish overnight, but inside the Sanchez mansion, a fragile peace began to take root. For the first time, Joy and Stacy moved through its halls not as shadows, but as people who belonged, at least in Leonard's eyes. Stacy adjusted quicker than Joy had feared. Children, Joy realized, were resilient in ways adults forgot how to be. She loved the pool, adored the lemon courtyard, and had even convinced Tanya to let her help in the kitchen by folding napkins into strange star shapes. The staff doted on her, their own quiet rebellion against gossip and scandal. But Joy struggled. She still caught herself lowering her gaze, avoiding rooms where portraits of the Sanchez lineage stared down with cold disapproval. At night, she lay awake in the narrow staff bed, Stacy snoring softly beside her, and whispered, "This isn't ours. It can't last." One morning, she found Leonard already in the kitchen, sleeves rolled, pouring himself coffee. He looked tired, but calm, like a man who had decided what battles were worth fighting. "You don't have to keep living in the staff wing," he said. Joy froze. "Where else would I go?" "With me." He said it so simply, as though it wasn't the most dangerous sentence in the world. "There's space. More than enough." She shook her head. "Leonard, people already think." "Let them." He cut in. "They already wrote their stories. Why not write our own?" Joy's chest ached at the way he said "our." She wanted to believe him. She wanted Stacy to believe him. But fear still shadowed her. Later that week, Leonard surprised Stacy with a telescope. She gasped, throwing her arms around his waist. "Now I can see my constellation for real," she shouted. That night, the three of them stood on the balcony together, Stacy's small hands guiding the scope. "There," she cried. "Mama's star, Papa's star, my star. We're a family of stars." Joy's breath caught at Stacy's words. She glanced at Leonard, who was already watching her. His eyes said it all. He wanted this too. Days slipped into a rhythm. Stacy went to school with a driver, no longer teased because her father's name had become both shield and sword. Joy learned to navigate the mansion's endless rooms, no longer just cleaning them but inhabiting them. Leonard came home earlier than before, sometimes helping Stacy with homework, sometimes just sitting quietly with Joy in the courtyard, where words weren't always necessary. But healing wasn't only soft moments. It was sharp edges too. Nadia returned, her presence filling the house like a storm cloud. She watched Stacy with an expression Joy couldn't read, half curiosity, half something else. One evening she called Joy aside. "You think love is enough?" Nadia asked coldly. "It isn't. The world you've stepped into will eat you alive. If you want to stay, you'll need more than love. You'll need strength. The kind that doesn't break when the papers turn cruel again." Joy met her gaze, steadier than she expected. "I've been surviving since I was 18. You think I'm afraid of a few headlines? I only care about Stacy, and she's stronger than you know." For a long moment, Nadia studied her. Then, surprisingly, she said, "Good," and walked away. That night, Joy sat beside Leonard in the lemon courtyard. "Your mother doesn't think I'll survive this." Leonard reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then let's prove her wrong." For the first time, Joy didn't pull away. The healing had begun. Not perfect, not complete, but real. A family taking shape under pressure, a constellation slowly stitching itself across a once-empty sky. But far away, in a dim bar, Manny slammed a newspaper onto the counter, Leonard's face staring back at him, triumphant beside Joy and Stacy. "Not over," he muttered. "Not by a long shot. The peace they'd built was fragile, and some storms refused to die quietly. The fragile calm lasted only a handful of weeks before the cracks returned. Joy had begun to allow herself small luxuries she once forbade. Laughter with Stacy echoing through the courtyard, a quiet dinner with Leonard where their hands brushed, and neither pulled away. The sight of her daughter falling asleep under a roof that no longer leaked. It was fragile, yes, but it felt real. Then Manny struck. It began with whispers on social media. Anonymous accounts posted grainy photos of Joy from years ago, working at the neon-lit bar where she'd first lost herself. The captions were venom dressed as curiosity. "This is Leonard Sanchez's new love. A bartender turned mistress." Within hours, gossip outlets had picked it up. They painted her as a manipulator, someone who had trapped Leonard with a child, and now sought to climb higher. Joy read one article on her phone in the staff lounge, her chest tightening with each word. She had survived judgment before, but never like this. Not with Stacy old enough to understand. Not with the world eager to use an 8-year-old girl as proof of scandal. When Leonard found her, the phone was already on the floor, her hands trembling. "It's him," she whispered. "Manny. He's feeding them. He wants to ruin me." Leonard crouched, lifting her chin gently. "Then he's picked the wrong war, because now he has to go through me." But Manny wasn't alone. Elizabeth had resurfaced, sharper and more dangerous. Behind closed doors, she met Manny at a hotel bar, the same smirk painted on both their faces. "You've given them bait," Elizabeth purred, stirring her drink. "Now let's give them a hook." Manny slid a folder across the table. More forgeries, more evidence of debts Joy never owed, contracts she never signed. All she has to do is breathe wrong and we bury her. The press won't ask if it's real. They'll only ask how loud it can be screamed. Elizabeth's smile widened. "Perfect. I don't need her destroyed. Just discredited. Once Leonard sees her as a liability, he'll come back to where he belongs." "And my cut?" Manny asked. "You'll get your money," she said smoothly. "But don't mistake payment for partnership. You're a tool, and tools don't last." Back at the mansion, Joy felt the storm brewing before it even hit. Paparazzi began waiting outside the gates. Stacy came home from school quieter than usual, asking, "Mama, why are people saying you tricked Mr. Leonard?" The words broke Joy's heart in ways fists never could. That night, she told Leonard, "Maybe Elizabeth is right. Maybe I am a liability. Maybe the best thing I can do is leave before Stacy gets crushed under all of this." Leonard's voice was iron. "Don't you dare. Don't give them what they want. But if this hurts Stacy," he cut her off, eyes blazing. "I've watched men and women lie, cheat, and destroy in the name of power. That's not who you are. You've done nothing but fight for your daughter. If the world can't see that, then the world is blind. And I won't let blind men write our story." For the first time, Leonard pulled her into his arms, not as an employer, not as a savior, but as a man who had chosen her. "You're not leaving," he murmured. "Not now. Not ever." Joy clung to him, torn between fear and relief. She wanted to believe his strength was enough to shield them. But even as she pressed her face into his shoulder, a chill ran through her, because Manny and Elizabeth weren't finished. They had one more card to play, one more betrayal waiting in the dark. And when it came, it wouldn't just threaten Joy. It would threaten everything Leonard thought he knew about loyalty, family, and love. It arrived on a weekday so ordinary it felt like an insult. A gray morning, low clouds over the hills, delivery vans nosing past the staff gate like always. Joy was in the pantry counting linens when Tanya slipped in, shut the door with her hip, and set a manila envelope on the counter like it was hissing. "From legal," she said, "and from the past." Her eyes softened. "Breathe, honey." Inside were photocopies, contracts, IOUs, a grainy bar receipt with Joy's name scrawled, in a handwriting that wasn't hers. She'd seen versions of these before, the forgeries Manny waved like flags. But clipped to the top was something new, a chain of emails between Elizabeth and Manny, pulled from a hacked throwaway account and forwarded to Nadia's general counsel by a junior publicist who decided she was done being useful to villains. No speculation this time. Prices, dates, instructions, stir, don't burn, leak, don't flood, discredit, don't destroy. It read like a recipe for cruelty. Joy's first reaction wasn't triumph. It was fatigue so deep it made her sit. "So this is how they do it," she said quietly. "They don't just lie, they choreograph it." Tanya squeezed her shoulder. "And now we choreograph back." The house moved with a purpose Joy had never felt before, a machine switching from defense to offense. Nadia called a meeting. The legal team arrived with laptops and calm. Leonard stood at the head of the long table, not as a prince with a problem, but as a man with a line he'd decided would not be crossed again. "We do this by the book," he said, voice low. "No deals. No backroom mercy. Full restraining order on Manny. Civil action for defamation against both. And we take our time." Let the truth be boring and thorough. Nadia watched her son as if seeing a rare species, conviction without performance. When she spoke, it wasn't to scold, but to assign. "We'll also make them small," she said briskly. "No press conferences, no victory laps, quiet filings, quiet wins. We starve them of oxygen." She turned to Joy. "You will be asked to recount things no one should have to say twice. You'll be believed in this room. If you want a lawyer of your own, you have one. My retainer. No strings." Her tone made clear it was an offer, not a leash. Joy nodded, unable to trust her voice. The days that followed weren't cinematic. They were paperwork and paralegals, depositions and Uber receipts, digital forensics that felt like archaeology in a landfill. It was ugly, and it was healing. Each corroborated date, each metadata stamp, each convenience store camera that placed Manny where he said he wasn't, stitched a little piece of Joy's dignity back together. Leonard sat for his deposition without flinching, answered questions about his past with a clarity that made narrative starve. Nadia, terrifying when deployed for good, dismantled a gossip columnist on the phone with 3 cool sentences and a suggestion about libel insurance premiums. Elizabeth waited for the noise. It didn't come. Instead, she received a letter via courier with a tone that could frost glass. "Ms. Hale, enclosed, please find a copy of the complaint filed this morning." She read it once, twice, then hurled a glass at a wall and watched it explode into a constellation she didn't control. She called Manny. He didn't pick up. He was busy discovering that bench warrants don't care about charisma. When the sheriff's deputies knocked on Manny's apartment door, he tried the old smiles. They didn't tip. In the back of the car, cuffed and yowling about setups, he still managed to believe he was the main character. Joy wasn't there. She was at home. There, home now, ironing Stacy's school shirt with the kind of focus you bring to holy things. The phone buzzed once with a simple text from Tanya, handled. Joy stared at the word until her eyes stung. Not revenge, not even justice exactly. Just handled. Like a bad wire finally taped and tucked away so it would stop sparking in the night. The city, fickle as always, moved on with indecent speed. Headlines pivoted. The same outlets that had implied Joy was a climber now posted refreshes about manufactured smear campaigns and court findings. No apologies, of course, just new links. Leonard ignored calls. Nadia hosted a luncheon for women who ran shelters and quietly doubled the foundation's grant to a group that expunged records for survivors of exploitation. The staff kitchen filled with donated cupcakes that Stacy said tasted like victory and too much frosting. Healing took another step forward in the smallest room in the house. Joy knocked on the frame of Nadia's study and waited to be summoned. The older woman looked up, expression neutral. Joy set a stack of documents on the desk. School schedules, pediatrician notes, the boring proof of a life that now expected plans. "I keep thinking of what you said," Joy began, hands steady. "Love isn't enough. You were right. It isn't." Nadia's eyebrow rose by a millimeter. And yet, Joy continued, "it's the only reason I didn't quit when every headline told me to. I don't want your approval. I want your partnership where Stacy is concerned. She's your granddaughter. She will hear our stories from us, not them." For a beat, nothing. Then Nadia nodded once, a queen admitting a worthy treaty. "She's fierce," Nadia said, surprising herself with the warmth in the word. "She will need that." She slid open a drawer, withdrew a slim leather case and placed it on the desk. "Keys to the small guest house. It's private. Yours if you want it." Joy exhaled a laugh that sounded like relief trying on Joy for the first time. "We'll take it," she said. "On one condition." Nadia tilted her head. "You teach her gin rummy. She thinks I cheat." A corner of Nadia's mouth betrayed her. "I do," she said, "but only to teach strategy." The night that followed wasn't fireworks. It was pancakes for dinner because Stacy had decreed Fridays were for round foods. It was Leonard home before dark, sleeves rolled, asking if anyone had fed the cats that Stacy insisted were imaginary until they weren't. It was Joy leaning in the doorway of the small guest house, watching the two people she'd built her. Soul around arranged planets made of construction paper over a window that would never need blackout curtains. After bedtime, with the guest house quiet and the lemon trees outside drawing shadows on the rug, Leonard set a small box on the table like a man placing a truth where it can be safe. "No speech," he said, eyes uncharacteristically nervous. "Just what?" "I know." He opened it. The ring was simple, the kind of light that doesn't brag. "I want boring mornings and loud school night science fairs. I want to fix broken cabinet hinges and mess up pancakes. I want us to be ordinary on purpose." He swallowed. "Marry me." The old Joy would have looked for exits, for traps, for fine print. This Joy looked at the man who had pulled her out of water twice now, once from a pool, once from a story, and saw not rescue, but partnership. "Yes," she said, and the word didn't tremble. "But if you burn the pancakes, you're ordering. Take out." He grinned like a boy, then like a father, then like a man who'd finally arrived at the right address. They didn't announce it. They told the house the way people tell family, one room at a time. Tanya cried, then swore, then hugged them both like she'd built the universe herself. Nadia said, "Good." And then, after a pause, "We'll need more chairs." Stacy asked if the ring could have its own star. "We'll ask NASA," Leonard said gravely. "They're slow to return emails." The ceremony came a month later in the Lemon Courtyard, a Tuesday dressed up in white shirts and linen, and not a single vendor who used the phrase aspirational. The director friend played a piano that had learned restraint. Nadia wore a suit that looked like she'd wrestled it into elegance and won. Tanya read a blessing that made even the stone planters listen. Elizabeth sent a bouquet the way certain people confess, too late and without specificity. No one mentioned her name. Stacy read a poem she called Gravity, standing on a little stool because the mic wasn't built for small, brave humans. "Gravity," she read, "is the reason pancakes land butter side up when someone is watching. It's what keeps stars where I can find them again. It's the way Mama's hand finds mine without looking. It's how houses decide to stop being lonely." The adults pretended dust was the culprit. After, there was cake that lacked restraint and lemonade that didn't. Leonard danced like a man who had made peace with looking foolish in front of the right witnesses. Joy let herself be held without negotiating. Later, with the twinkle lights clicking off one strand at a time, they walked Stacy to bed. She fell asleep mid-sentence, certain tomorrow would arrive, certain the ceiling galaxies would still be. There, certain gravity had their address. Months will pass, papers will print other stories, the city will forget and remember and forget again. But some truths stick. A lemon tree that outlives a rumor. A girl who learned her constellation had room for more stars. A woman who found that survival is the floor, not the ceiling. A man who traded power for presence and didn't lose a thing. That mattered. On a quiet night, a breeze from the ocean climbs the hill and nudges the guest house window. Inside, Joy opens it to let the cool in. Leonard sets down 2 mugs of tea. Stacy calls out once in her sleep, then settles. The house, once a museum of money, sounds like breakfast waiting. They stand at the window together and listen to loss. Angela's hum a song that for once isn't about hunger. It's about staying. It's about choosing. It's about being ordinary on purpose.